Chapter 4 of the Expedition of the Donner Party and Its Tragic Fate. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Alana Jordan. The Expedition of the Donner Party and Its Tragic Fate by Eliza P. Donner Houghton. Chapter 4. 4th of July in an Immigrant Party. Open letter of Lansford Hastings. George Donner elected captain of party bound for California. Entering the Great Desert. Insufficient supply of food. Volunteers commissioned by my father to hasten to Sutter's Fort for relief. On the 2nd of July, we met Mr. Bryant returning to Prevail on some man of our company to take the place of Mr. Kendall of the bridal party, who had heard such evil reports of California from returning trappers that his courage had failed, and he had deserted his companions and joined the Oregon Company. Hiram Miller, who had driven one of my father's wagons from Springfield, took advantage of this opportunity for a faster method of travel and left with Mr. Bryant. The following evening we encamped near the reinforced bridal party, and on the morning of the 4th, Messrs. Russell and Bryant came over to help us to celebrate our national holiday. A salute was fired at sunrise, and later a platform of boxes was arranged in a grove close by, and 9:30 o'clock every one in camp was in holiday attire and ready to join the procession which marched around the camp and to the adjacent grove. There, patriotic songs were sung, the Declaration of Independence was read, and Colonel Russell delivered an address. After enjoying a feast prepared by the women of the company, and drinking to the health and happiness of friends and kindred in reverent silence, with faces toward the east, our guests bade us a final good-bye and Godspeed. We had on many occasions entertained eastward-bound rovers whose various experiences on the Pacific coast made them interesting talkers. Those who favored California extolled its excellence and had scant praise for Oregon. Those who loved Oregon described its marvelous advantages over California and urged homeseekers to select it as the wiser choice. Consequently, as we neared the parting of the ways, some of our people were in perplexity which to choose. On the 19th of July, we reached the Little Sandy River, and there found 4 distinct companies encamped in neighborly groups, among them our friends, the Thorntons and Reverend Mr. Cornwall. Most of them were listed for Oregon, and were resting their cattle preparatory to entering the long dry drive of 40 miles known as Greenwood's Cutoff. There my father and others deliberated over a new route to California. They were led to do so by an open letter which had been delivered to our company on the 17th by special messenger on horseback. The letter was written by Lansford W. Hastings, author of Travel Among the Rocky Mountains through Oregon and California. It was dated and addressed at the headwaters of the Sweetwater to all California emigrants now on the road, and intimated that on account of war between Mexico and the United States, the government of California would probably oppose the entrance of American emigrants to its territory, and urge those on the way to California to concentrate their numbers and strength, and to take the new and better route which he had explored from Fort Bridger by way of the south end of Salt Lake. It emphasized the statement that this new route was nearly 200 miles shorter than the old one by way of Fort Hall and the headwaters of Ogden's River, and that he himself would remain at Fort Bridger to give further information and to conduct the emigrants through to the settlement. The proposition seemed so feasible that after a cool deliberation and discussion a party was formed to take the new route. My father was elected captain of this company, and from that time on it was known as the Donner Party. It included our original Sangamon folks, except Mrs. Keyes and Hiram Miller, and the following additional members: Patrick Breen, wife and 7 children; Louis Kesseberg, wife and 2 children; Mrs. Lavina Murphy, a widow, and 5 children; William Eddy, wife, and 2 children; William Pike, wife, and 2 children; William Foster, wife and child; William McCutcheon, wife and child; Mr. Wolfinger and wife; Patrick Dolan, Charles Stanton, Samuel Shoemaker, Hardcoop, Spitzer, Joseph Reinhardt, James Smith, Walter Heron, and Luke Halloran. While preparing to break camp, the last named had begged my father for a place in our wagon. He was a stranger to our family, afflicted with consumption, too ill to make the journey on horseback, and the family with whom he had traveled thus far could no longer accommodate him. His forlorn condition appealed to my parents, and they granted his request. All the companies broke camp and left the Little Sandy on the 20th of July. The Oregon Division, with a section for California, took the right-hand trail for Fort Hall, and the Donner Party the left-hand trail to Fort Bridger. After parting from us, Mr. Thornton made the following note in his journal: July 20, 1846. The Californians were much elated and in fine spirits, with the prospect of better and nearer road to the country of their destination. Mrs. George Donner, however, was an exception. She was gloomy, sad, and dispirited in view of the fact that her husband and others could think of leaving the old road, and confide in a statement of a man of whom they knew nothing, but was probably some selfish adventurer. 5 days later, the Donner Party reached Fort Bridger, and were informed by Hastings' agent that he had gone forward as pilot to a large emigrant train, but had left instructions that all later arrivals should follow his trail. Further, that they would find an abundant supply of wood, water, and pasturage along the whole line of road, except one dry drive of 30 miles, or 40 at most; that they would have no difficult cañons to pass, and that the road was generally smooth, level, and hard. At Fort Bridger, my father took driver for one of his wagons, John Baptiste Troubaud, a sturdy young mountaineer, the offspring of a French father, a trapper, and a Mexican mother. John claimed to have a knowledge of the languages and customs of various Indian tribes, through whose country we should have to pass, and urged that this knowledge might prove helpful to the company. The trail from the fort was all that could be desired, and on the 3rd of August we reached the crossing of Weber River, where it breaks through the mountains into the cañon. There we found a letter from Hastings stuck in the cleft of a projecting stick near the roadside. It advised all parties to encamp and await his return for the purpose of showing them a better way than through the cañon of Weber River, stating that he had found the road over which he was then piloting a train very bad, and feared other parties might not be able to get their wagons through the cañon leading to the valley of the Great Salt Lake. He referred, however, to another route, which he declared to be much better, as it avoided the cañon altogether. To prevent unnecessary delays, Messrs. Reed, Pike, and Stanton volunteered to ride over the new route, and, if advisable, bring Hastings back to conduct us to the open valley. After 8 days, Mr. Reed returned alone, and reported that he and his companions overtook Hastings with his train near the south end of Salt Lake; that Hastings refused to leave his train, but was finally induced to go with them to the summit of a ridge of the Wasatch Mountains, and from there point out as best he could the directions to be followed. While exploring on the way back, Mr. Reed had become separated from Messrs. Pike and Stanton, and now feared they might be lost. He himself had located landmarks and blazed trees, and felt confident that, by making occasional short clearings, we could get our wagons over the new route as outlined by Hastings. Searchers were sent ahead to look up the missing men, and we immediately broke camp and resumed travel. The following evening we were stopped by a thicket of quaking ash, through which it required a full day's hard work to open a passageway. Thence our course lay through a wilderness of rugged peaks and rock-bound cañons until a heavily obstructed gulch confronted us. believing that it would lead out to the Utah River valley.